What up? How's everybody doing out there?
Good.
Yeah, me too.
I'll speak for everyone.
Yeah, thank God you are everyone. You are the size of everyone. Today we are a fashion faux pas, as you can see, but hey, that's okay. But we got a special guest for you. If you don't know Funkboy Ivan Bodley, folks, you should. Ivan, how are you doing?
Man, so good. Everything is cool. Great to see you guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Definitely. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I got my notes here, so excuse me if I look down because I like to use notes. I'm just that way. Looking through your profile and all that kind of good stuff, what got you inspired to basically write a memoir?
Well, I had a lot of memories and I was starting to lose them, and I figured time to write them down before they start evaporating on me, Now, what really happened was, I've been doing this a long time. I've been traveling up and down the road for 30 years now, give or take, since I was a wee puppy. And what would happen is on a sound check, we do a sound check at a show, and then we'd be sitting down to dinner between the sound check and the show, and the band sitting around the table, and something weird had happened during the day. Let's say, I don't know, tire blew out, a monitor fell over, something crazy. And it would always put me in mind of something crazier that had happened on a previous gig. I was going to say, yeah, I'm not going to believe this. Is one time we did such and such and such and such. And it's just like I have all these, everything would put me in mind of something else, would remind me of something else. And the people around the table would say, listen, you got to write these things down. There's just so many of them. And there's so many odd things that have happened that are funny and untoward and interesting. And so I sat down probably starting about 4 years ago and tried to see if I actually had enough to compose to put together into a book format. And turns out I did. There's a whole lot of things going on. And then I don't know if you heard, but about 2 years ago, suddenly we all had a lot of time on our hands because a little bit, because all the live music stopped. All the gigs stopped for like 15 months. We just sat at our houses going, well, I guess that's over. Now what do we do? So that gave me the time to really polish it up, finish it up, format it, get it copy edited, get it put together on Amazon and actually put out into the world. So that was, trying to make lemonade out of the lemons that the pandemic was handing you. And that's sort of how that came to be.
Nice. I like it. That's pretty cool. Now, for those of you that aren't, sorry, I can't talk today, apparently. For those of you that are out there, he has played
like you
with, oh yeah, man, I cannot talk today. He has played with over 50 Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
And that's Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
now,
not like Reggie Jackson.
No.
Michael
He has
Jordan.
played with 50 Music Hall of Famers.
Yes.
Now, that's pretty phenomenal in its own. Who has been your most memorable artist that you've played with?
Well, there's so many that have been so great and so wonderful. But it's just funny that you sort of mentioned Reggie Jackson there, because I've been playing with the Shirelles on and off for about 30 years, right?
Wow, that's
so
great.
As Shirley Alston Reeves, the original lead singer of the world's famous Shirelles, that's the full booking, and she's been in the Rock Hall since I think 91 or something like that. And she keeps getting inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, and the New Jersey Music Hall of Fame, and the Women's Hall of Fame, and all this kind of stuff. So every time she gets introduced on stage, they say Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Blues Hall of Fame, Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame. And we're in the back of the band. We all go, Baseball Hall of Fame, just to heckle her, which is the one Hall of Fame that she's actually not in, but
not
it's
one.
like,
Yes, one.
Not yet. You never know.
Not yet. You know what I'm saying? Not yet. She's still time, but it's like this running joke of a heckle that we do just internally within the band, off mic, just to make her just shake her head, go, y'all knuckleheads,
She's gonna have to book the Hall of Fame. Just to play in the Hall of Fame, and
then say she'd been there.
That's the way to do it.
Well, and to that point exactly, I've played in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame museum with Shirley. Wow. We played with Shirley, and we played with Harvey Fuqua from the Moonglows, who's also an inductee. So I've actually played in the hall itself, but we haven't played in Cooperstown yet. Give it time, like we're available. Right. If you need entertaining, we'll be over.
I like it.
You know what? We're on the Hall of Fame right now.
Yeah.
So I got to ask this question. Yeah. Are there some artists that you believe are not in the Hall of Fame right now?
100%.
Absolutely
100%.
ridiculously. It's
100%.
offensive that they're not in there.
100%. The reason that the Rock Hall exists and has been so successful over the years has kind of been sort of the brainchild of Jan Wenner from Rolling Stone and Ahmet Ertegun from Atlantic Records. They kind of put the whole thing together. So they had their stable of people that they knew and loved and were close to. And then there were, in this business that we call show, there are certain people that just kind of cheese you off, and like, I don't like that guy, or this person. So some of those people are just not in the Rock Hall because they made enemies with the wrong people.
Right.
One of the big movers and shakers in the early days of the Rock Hall was Phil Spector, creator of the Wall of Sound, producer of the Ronettes and the Crystals, and on and on and on. So we think that possibly, we don't have anything for sure, but we think that he was kind of actively sort of campaigning to keep Darlene Love out of the Rock Hall for years. Just sort of like he did, because he felt like, I don't know, he created her or whatever, he was responsible. Like he wanted to be in the Rock Hall, but he didn't want her. And as soon as he went to prison, suddenly the next year she got nominated and inducted. We're like, isn't that an interesting time? So sometimes it depends who you know. Sometimes it depends who you don't know. And there are 100% artists that I play with who should absolutely be in the Rock Hall. And I'm not going to go into it because I'm sure there's a reason why somebody got mad at somebody. So I'm just going to leave it alone.
I was going to hope I could get your top 3.
I'm going to just enjoy my view from the sidelines, and
not going to be controversial.
I've learned how to stay out of it. But here's what happens every year when the nominations come out, right? And they say, here are the inductees this year, and I go, oh my goodness, let me look back at the old resume and see if now suddenly my tally has gone up by one person because of a gig that I did 20 years ago, like with no further effort upon my own. Perhaps my statistic that you just gleefully read out has improved. And it happened 2 years ago because the Doobie Brothers got inducted with Jeff Skunk Baxter. And I had played with Jeff Skunk Baxter, or actually he played with us when I was music directing from Sam Moore from Sam and Dave. Jeff was, our guest guitar player one time. So I've got a great picture of me and Jeff on stage with Sam and the Jumbotron behind us. I'm like, that's a rock and roll Hall of Famer I played with right there, even though we played one gig together, but it counts. It goes on the resume,
Exactly. Who are your musical influences?
Man, so many. I grew up, my mom, thank God, was so hip. Her record collection was like Gladys Knight and the Pips and Stevie Wonder and Ike and Tina live at Carnegie Hall and the Beatles and the Stones, and she had a really very hip record collection. So I grew up with those records in the house, sort of not fully realizing the impact of what they were and where they came from. And then I really didn't start playing music at all until I was like a senior in high school. I'd kind of dabbled around with a couple of instruments, played guitar for about a week, played viola for about a minute. I don't even think it was a week, played piano for maybe 6 months, and none of it really stuck. None of it really took. And then I remember sort of being a senior in high school, sort of thinking like I still loved music. I just liked seeing bands and live performances, and I thought that was just the greatest thing. And I remember seeing, if you remember this old show called The Midnight Special that was hosted by Wolfman Jack. This was a live music TV show.
I remember that, yeah.
Right? On Friday nights, this is before MTV. I was a wee puppy, and like there weren't many opportunities to see live bands play on television. Saturday Night Live and maybe The Tonight Show, that was it, right?
Yep.
So this concert show would come on, and I saw Rick James and the Stone City Band playing this song called You and I, which has this bass line that goes like, down, 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 down. It's a 4-note bass line, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I can do that. I think maybe I could figure that out. And a buddy of mine from high school, this is down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't know if you can tell if the accent comes back sometimes. He had a bass in his room that only had 2 strings on it, just the low 2 strings on it. The other 2 strings are busted, gone, missing. And it turns out you only need the bottom 2 strings to make most of your money in life. And also you only need those bottom 2 strings to play that Rick James bass line. So I picked up his bass with 2 strings missing, and I went down, 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 down. I was like, I'm in. I'm in. Let's do this. What do I do next? So then I found the one kid who was played bass in my high school who was a year ahead of me, and he had a used bass. He sold me. I still have it. It's a 1978 Fender Precision bass. I bought for $425 in 1981, and here we are. You know, just you just don't know what's going to lead to what. But yeah, I think I saw Rick James on the Midnight Special and said, maybe let's try that. Let's try that.
That is cool. That is interesting. Rick James. Who would have thought that Rick James would have been a mentor, right?
Yeah. And also those records that, like I mentioned, that my mom had, they were like from Stax and Motown. So I was listening to Duck Dunn, who did all the house from Booker T and the MGs, who played on all the Stax records without knowing it. I was listening to James Jamerson, who was the bass player on all the Motown records without knowing it, And Gladys Knight, Bob Babbitt, who was also one of the Funk brothers at Motown, and he played bass on all like Midnight Train to Georgia and all those things. And I'm listening to these great musicians, again, not credited on any of the records. And it just sort of stuff came into my DNA, like this deep Southern soul music kind of thing that without realizing, I was just raised on that, weaned on it basically. So then when I got out into the world and I started playing like with these artists now, I'm like, yeah, I know these records, I grew up with them. So it was great stuff for me.
Who do you like to listen to today?
I'm all over the place. I spend a lot of time collecting really obscure, moldy 45s from 1968 that there was only ever 100 copies of it pressed by, bands that nobody's ever heard of. But like there's these blogs that you can find, especially like in England, like the Northern Soul scene, people that know these records, they're super rare, collectible. And you listen to them and you can hear like, yeah, they didn't really have the recording technology together, and maybe the guitar player didn't really know what key we were in, and there was, something janky about the records. Like, there's a reason why they probably weren't big hits at the time, but they're so cool. The soul is so deep on these records, So I go find these crazy, obscure things, and I just, I'm delighted every time I find, a band that I've never heard of. I'm like, this is great. They had one soul side out in 1963. I'm like, this is great. That's my perfect thing.
And then it's interesting, like he was mentioning how your parents' record collection is kind of where you start, because like I had Burt Bacharach going on at my house, or Elvis, right?
Sure.
So they just came out with the Elvis movie, which talks about his influence with basically Motown and the jazz and the South.
Yeah, even before that, the deep blues, Big Boy Crudup. That's who he was covering for his first.
Right.
Record.
That's what I was just going to say. The blues was heavy. He was heavy into that.
He's from Mississippi, man. He's deep in it. He grew up deep in it.
Right?
Yeah.
So my question to you is, like, you talked about those as your influences and stuff like that, but as a kid and you were learning in high school and you were playing the bass, and you talked about the one song that you played and stuff like that, but did some of those old albums also play into which direction you wanted to go?
100%, because I just loved them. I love those records almost as much as my mom did. And she also got into like some of the she had some Broadway records too that I was like, that's cool, but I really dug like the Southern soul stuff. And again, growing up in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you're deep in the South. Yeah. So those records, King Floyd, Groove Me, right?
Yep.
Sam and Dave, you didn't have to shake it like you did, but you did. And I thank you, like it doesn't get any better than that. I'm sorry. That's the kill, that's killer stuff.
Oh, I
want to have that song going through my head all day now.
I've got a fun question for you.
Yeah.
Is there a song out there, because I think this is funny, it happens all the time, that you have sung to, and then later on you found out you were saying the wrong words?
Oh, yes, all of them, because I'm so poor with lyrics. Like, I'm a bass guy, so I hear the music first. Last thing I hear is the words. So a lot of the first words I'm hearing are ha 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 ha, yeah. I don't even hear the words at all. But yeah, there's a whole websites full of like famously misheard lyrics, misquoted lyrics, and I think that's just hysterical. I love it.
Have you ever played with just the two strings on stage?
Yeah, well, yeah. Actually, I mean, there's a lot of times where like that's all you need because those are the money notes. But there was one time
did you pull that actual bass out? Have you played that bass on stage?
The 2-string bass, the actual
Yes.
2-string with the 2 strings busy. No, that wasn't my bass. I was a loner. So I've had a string break and have to finish the set, on 3 for sure. But what I was going to say was we were on tour one time with Gloria Gaynor, and we were down in Brazil, and we were playing in the Amazon basin, which is the humidity is off the charts humid down there. And we're playing in a semi-outdoor kind of venue. And we did the sound check, and everything was sort of fine. But between the sound check, and because we come from further south where it was less humid, and we'd been flying in an airplane which was less humid. So when we got to the venue, we played the sound check. Somewhere between the sound check and the show, the humidity change affects the wood of the bass, because wood is porous, so it absorbs water, right? So the wood swelled up to the point where the A string, the middle string of the bass, was flush against the fingerboard. So when I went to go play it, it just went thuck. That's all it went, like plunk. There was no sound out of it. I'm like, whoa, we're in the concert. We're actually playing the show now. So this is back in the 90s. And at the time I was using a 5-string bass with an extra low B string on it. I don't use those anymore, but too often. But I was like trying to refinger the show kind of up here, basically on 2 strings, like what you're talking about, and seeing how long I could get away with it. 3rd song in, 2nd song, I don't remember when, the whole power shuts off because I don't know, they must have had the entire rig plugged into one outlet on the wall or something. I don't remember what it was. So we're complete darkness, all the lights are out, all the amps are out, like the show is on hold for the moment. So I go diving for my adjustment, my tool bag, so I can like pull out the Allen key that adjusts the truss rod and get the thing, so it's going to be playable again. And I get it done, within about, I don't know, 30 seconds. Like I'm ready to go. And
That's
then
a long time though.
Yeah.
Well, but like I said, fortunately we're in total pitch black and we're making no sound. So it feels like an eternity, but then the power stayed off for, I think, another 45 minutes or an hour.
Oh, wow.
Like it took them that long to sort of figure out where the circuit breaker was and get us, I don't know, we might have blacked out the whole town for all I know. And the audience in Brazil, they were just so used to it. Everybody stayed. Nobody left. Nobody made a fuss. They're just like, all right, cool. When the show comes back on, we'll be there. So I was in a panic for like 3 seconds, and then I was like, oh, well, no need now, But yeah, it was a 2-string bass for about 3 songs there.
Interesting. So would you consider that your strangest gig, or would you say you've had stranger ones?
That wasn't even the strangest one that week. Come on, man.
All right, let's hear it.
They're all kind of them, and a couple of them I do go into the book. I think probably the strangest one, I hard to say the strangest, but it was strange on several levels. We played a wedding gig in Manhattan here, and it was at an old decommissioned synagogue that was built in the 1800s. So it's this really Gothic, kind of scary, rickety-looking building. And every time I played there a bunch of times because they rent it out for weddings and funerals and bar mitzvahs. And they light it up so it looks like, the set of Game of Thrones or something. It's really dramatic looking place, right? And we walked in there, and same thing, we're used to all this lighting, and there was in the middle of the floor, there was like an island. They'd manufactured an island. There was a table on a platform, and around it was a moat of running water. And like these trees, like this floral arrangement that must have cost, I don't know, $100,000 in a florist bill just to like make this whole installation, basically, right? And what we realized that, typically you'll do a wedding, you might have 150 guests, 200, 250, whatever it is. 0. They had 0 guests. There were no guests. It was just the couple. We were just playing in a little cocktail trio over in the corner for 2 people. It was the most uncomfortable thing you can possibly imagine. And at one point, sort of in the night, the bride made eye contact with us. And we're like, what do we do? do we respond? Do we act like human beings? Do we ignore the fact that we've been playing for 2 hours to 2 people? It was we within the band, we started jokingly calling it the Hannibal Lecter wedding, because we would not have been surprised to read in the paper the next day that somebody got eaten after the show, or I don't know. It was really, really odd, very odd.
Wow is right. Oh my God, that's
freaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got one for you. This should be interesting. We're going to play Bill and Ted's Great Adventure.
Go ahead.
You can go anywhere in time.
It's an excellent adventure, by the way.
Whatever. There's like 5 of them. Most of them went straight to DVD.
Still, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
We're in the franchise. I'm with you. Go ahead.
So you can go anywhere in history, and you're the bassist, obviously, but you're putting together a band. So you need a singer, a guitarist, and a drummer. Who you grabbing for your band?
Man, I've gotten versions of this question in various instances, like, who would you sort of ever have liked to have played with, kind of thing. And I think maybe my top 2 would be like Stevie Wonder, who's still around, possibly, so we got to grab Stevie on keys and vocal, right? And maybe like, I don't know, like a Steely Dan gig. So, we got maybe Michael Fagan, we get him on second keyboard and vocals. We got those 2 guys. And then drummers, we have to get Buddy Miles, I think, from the Jimi Hendrix Experience. We get him on drums. And, while we're back there, just get Jimmy. You need a guitar player. Just have him come along. And that'd be a pretty tight little band, I think. Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Wonder and Donald Fagen. That'd be all right. Be interesting, right?
That would be
That's an interesting collection of
phenomenal. Yeah.
Right?
I like it.
I mean, if we're going to go there, let's go there,
Might
right?
as well.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. Man, that is, sorry, my wheels are turning. Just to imagine being able to sit there and play with Jimi Hendrix. I mean, that would be just, sorry. Anyway, I'm going squirrel.
Nice.
I have that effect on things at times, so pardon me. This question is something that I kind of wanted to save for last. And I kind of want you to put it out there to all these young musicians. Being that freelance musician, how has that affected you? And would you recommend it for some of these young musicians out there?
Right. It is a mindset you have to get into, because you have to understand that sort of after every gig, you're unemployed. So you have to sort of be used to sort of constantly being unemployed, or constantly not, you don't have the job security that you have from punching a clock or doing a 9 to 5, and when I gave that up, my last day job was in 1989. I got to the point where I felt like I didn't have any more choices in my life. Like, I really felt like my office job was going to kill me. Like, I really only ever wanted to play music. And once I got to that realization, and it was not a happy one, because it's a very tough business to try to make a living in, much less try to have any success in. So I said, all right, if I'm going to do that, let me try to give it the old college try. And by college try, I mean, let's go to music school and try to get all the tools necessary to actually have a chance at then succeeding in the business, right? And then furthermore, I had to go to where the music is, and which in my case was New York City. Some people would think about maybe Nashville, some people think maybe Austin, maybe Los Angeles. It kind of depends on where the music is that you think you want to make, because you kind of have to be in proximity to it to collaborate with other people. So I graduated music school and I came back to New York City. So I'm starting over again. This is already my second career. I've already had a whole other career in the music business, working for a major label and the whole thing as a publicist. So I'm basically starting from zero again, and that's a tough pill to swallow. It's a tough sort of realization to come to, realize that's what you want to do, and then think like, well, there's no guarantees, but I got to give it a shot. Got to give it a shot. And what I did was I typed resumes. I typed resumes for the people that the phone company was laying off. It was a good karma job. For 3 years, while I was building up my music business, my freelance business as a bass player, one step at a time, piece by piece, this person leads to that person, until I kind of got it to a critical point where I could finally felt like I could do it all with just music. And that meant keeping the overhead low, living in not living in a penthouse apartment, you know what I'm saying? Like really living within your means, and sort of like, very gradually over time, 30 years later, I bought a house. But it took that long, saving up those pennies and sort of going step by step, piece by piece to get to it. So, if it's something that you're really passionate about, like make sure that you're really passionate about it, that you really feel like you have nothing else you want to do. And then if that's the case, go get the education, the training, the tools you need to then give yourself the chance at having success at it. And there's still no guarantees. Still no guarantees. You have to be realistic about that and accept that. And which is why I recommend a lot of people enjoy music as a hobby. Play with your band on the weekends. If you love that, do that. And be able, if you have a day job, you can afford nicer guitars. I support that entirely. Like, buy yourself a nice guitar and play on the weekends, as opposed to the pawn shop knockoffs we all start off, trying to make a living in the business.
I like it. Wow.
Man, I couldn't believe when you said I wanted to be the final question. I couldn't believe we were there.
I know.
This was amazing. This went fast.
That was amazing.
Great
Ivan.
interview.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I talk a lot, so I appreciate y'all having me.
No, it's been great.
Some of these stories are absolute. I'm just kind of sitting here. I don't know if you've noticed our faces. We're kind of just sitting here going, oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ivan. Mr. Funkboy, we greatly appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming on What Up today.
My pleasure. There's even more in the book. Anybody interested, there's way more stories in that.
Yeah,
book.
that's
Check
what I wanted to make sure. How do they find you? How do they get the book? Where are they going to be able to get all that information?
Way more than you would ever want to know about me is available at funkboy.net, funkboy.net. There's links to the Amazon, to the book. There's links to the book. It's a book. It's hardcover, softcover, Kindle edition. It's available as a YouTube series, spoken word. It's available as a podcast, like any possible medium you consume that you're interested in this stuff. It's available for you. And check it out if you dig it.
Awesome. And check it out in our description.
Yep.
And you've seen the link at the beginning of our show, so you can get a hold of them.
Definitely.
Yep.
Ivan, again, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Greatly appreciate you. Folks, from all of us here at What Up Official, you guys have a great day and a better tomorrow. What up?
What up?